Here, and we've got everybody on with us. So I want to welcome everybody to today's Agent Spotlight interview with Steve Freeman, who's in Georgia, and we're excited to talk to him today. He's been working with and around us for a long time. And Kitchens, I'll let you say some words because I know you've been working close with Steve for a while, and then Steve will let you introduce yourself. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, Steve brings a unique dynamic. We were just chatting here. 25 years in the business, has seen everything. When you get in and you cut your teeth, on new construction, and you get to see all the different dynamics that go into building, the product that most of us get to sell. It's it's an amazing experience, and so. When you have that opportunity to dive into that world, it brings a whole new perspective to what you bring to the table in real estate.
So Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
And I'll piggyback right on what John said. That is really true. I'm fortunate enough that I was a third generation builder for a little while. My granddad builder, my dad, my brother, even my stepfather, he's a builder. Two uncles are builders. So it's kind of all in the family. Then my mother was the broker of the family. And so, she kind of one day just, she was one of the top 100 in the whole metro Atlanta area in her day. And, she was like, hey, do you want to quit? And so what John said, and start selling with me. And it's true. I mean, that new construction, it folds over in so many different directions. I mean, you've got to be committed to be there. You learn the business. When things don't close, they're supposed to close. So it was a tremendous catapult to really kind of where I am today. Because John, you and I know, I mean, I did that pretty much for the first 17 or 18 years of my career. I was primarily a new construction agent. I mean, I did other stuff on the side, but about 5-6 years ago, I totally cut it out, just because it's a good cash flow business, but you have a job a lot of times when you work for a single builder or two. It is you're on the clock. So,
so that's interesting. I'd suggest that anybody who's on the call with us today who has some questions about working with builders, there's probably no better source than Steve to answer some of those for you. He may be able to shine a light on why you might be better off focused on something else, or at least if there's a builder in your market that you're trying to develop a relationship with, he can probably give you some tips on how to do that. And just before we really get rolling, I want to kind of lay the ground rules. Everybody should be able to raise their hand to ask a question, or you can type a message in the chat box, and we'll make sure to circle back at the end of the call and answer all those questions that might come up. Or if it's relevant to what we're talking about in the immediate moment, we might stop and address it right then. But be sure, and if there's anything that comes up that turns the light bulb on for you and you have a question, put it on, what do you call it? Put it in the parking lot, right, Kitchens?
Yeah. Put it in the parking lot. Let's get it. Let's get it. We won't let it slip.
There you go. So in this case, the parking lot is the chat box, or raise your hand and we'll get to it. But I want to just give a shout out to Steve. First off, man, you have been doing it a long time, obviously. I think by my count, probably a little over 25 years. Correct. So there's probably not much you haven't run into. And as I was doing a little research on your website, one thing that I thought was something that was worth noting and commendable is that probably now 25 years in a row, you've won the Circle of Something Award from your local board of realtors. I can't remember what they call it, a Circle of Excellence Award, something like that. I think Steve might have, well, there you go. He's back.
Sorry. 25 years. I missed that last part. 25 years of what?
That Circle of Excellence Award, or what is it they call it there with your local board of realtors? You've gotten it 25 years in a row.
It was it's the old $1 Million Club, and now they've changed the name to be a little bit more, that you don't really make $1 million if you make it. So this year I actually have already got the volume. I just have to turn in my forms, and this will be the 25th year that I've done it. So it's kind of, what's funny is it means nothing it's really done. It won't make me one more penny, but it's a goal that I set up 25 years ago that I wanted to achieve that, and I hit it. So for me, that's the only important part about that is I actually made something I set out to do.
Man, I think it speaks to a lot about your consistency and sticking to a system, because there's been plenty of years when it was tougher than the years prior to maybe do that. And so, that's commendable. And Kitchens, you got anything to say?
Man, I mean, that's what jumps out at me, right? Is just the level of consistency, and that's really what this whole business is about, right? Is just a handful of things over and over, falling in love with the boredom of being the repetitive activities, and that's the big challenge in this business. Is you got people that think that they it's cool to be an entrepreneur, so they think that they're trying to redefine what that means. And they think that they've got to try a bunch of different things, and they never fully get to the juice of what it is that works. And, one of the things that also stands out with Steve is there's, not afraid to put in the work, right? Not afraid to put in the effort. And I think, you look at how the career got started, and that ain't no joke what you said. If you're working with builders, it is a job. And you got to work your butt off. And so just instilling those habits and those ethics, just the consistency of something 25 years in a row is impressive. So that just, says a lot.
And tell us a little bit about your market too. When you get finished there, kind of adding on to that, Steve, I'd love to hear a little bit about your market. I think you're in Peachtree in that area. So fill us in a little bit about what it looks like.
So I work pretty much everything south of Atlanta. So we're a huge bedroom community for the airport. We get, and we're a very transient area. We get people from all over the world, all over the country that move here. I actually bought the domain name Yollywood.com because that's what people in California are calling us. Yollywood Realtor, I think I have. So it's kind of funny.
Why is it Yollywood?
Because that's, you've seen them Texans. We do the same thing. Hey, y'all, how you doing? So,
okay.
Yeah. So that they dropped the Holly and just made it Yollywood.
Yolly.
Now we got Bollywood, Hollywood, and Yollywood.
Yeah.
Yollywood.
So
there's a couple of lessons there too. We can unpack that a little bit later of where that came from.
Yeah. So, and kind of back to what John was saying earlier, though, about the 25 years. And I tell this to everybody, there's a lot of people that come in this business. I mean, I've been around long enough to see a bunch come and go. You see a lot of splash in the pan people that'll come in there and they'll have a tremendous success for 3, 4, 5 years. And then they kind of fizzle out, and look, 8, 9, 10, those were the hardest years that anybody's ever known in this business in their lifetime. Even my granddad would say that that's the first time he ever saw prices slide backwards. We saw them stagnate and slow down to almost nothing, but that was the first time. He's 93, he's still alive. And that was the first time he'd really ever seen the prices go downward. So that to survive that's a tough deal. And at the time, I'll tell you, I had no spouse. That was a big mountain to climb every morning.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think since we happen to be on that subject, what do you think some of the secrets are to maintaining that longevity?
Being sincere and honest. Don't go outside the gray. No transaction is not one transaction is worth taking yourself off the level that you should be at. I mean, you'll have thousands over your career, to do 1 or 2 bad ones. That will ding you way more than not getting the commission. That to me, that's kind of my mom. That's her pillar. Do people like you'd be done yourself, and just trying to stay positive. It even makes me kind of angry today a little bit to hear, not so much now, but maybe like 6 months ago, you started hearing a lot of people talking about the next bubble, this and that. And this people that hadn't been in this business for 3 or 4 years. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, do not go out there and scream gloom and doom. That is the worst thing that you can do, because as long as you stay positive, other people around you will too. It's when you don't bring the positivity to it that everyone else around you starts thinking, well, there is a problem. And I'll go back to my mom again on that. When she started selling in the 70s, think about this. The interest rates were at 18, 19, 20%. Well, she was, and I love you, Mom, I'm going to say this. She was young and dumb. She didn't even understand that 20% was something bad. You know, I mean, to her, that was just the way it was.
Can you imagine today if that happened? Oh my God, people would, you know, it's impossible to do business in that environment is what people would think.
It's already happening when it slid up to 5%.
Right, when you adjust for inflation and everything else?
Well, no, the interest rates this year went up 5%, and people were like, oh my God, it's 5%.
Well, yeah.
You know? And think about this. There's been a generation now that has not seen interest rates above 5 or 6%. Think about that.
100%.
Man, that's crazy. You know, one thing you said there too about the negativity and the positivity and what that leads to into our thinking. And, you know, if you allow that negativity to creep in, then that scarcity mindset starts to creep in. And, you know, when that scarcity starts to creep in, then creativity goes out the window. And so the best thing that we can do is stay positive, stay solution focused, which allows our minds to continue to have, you know, and really embrace that abundance mindset, which allows for the creativity. And that's where things happen, right? That's how you work through solutions. That's how you work through challenges, is really having that type of mindset. But man, the second you get negative, the second you get scarcity mindset, you're not able to think of solutions, and it really hinder you, and it'll really take you backwards. So man, that was a great point. You know, I just wanted to highlight what you just said there about scarcity, you know, that negativity or positivity in your thinking and in your behavior and in everything that you do.
And I'm going to piggyback right back on that again and say, you know, in this market that we're in now in Atlanta or south of Atlanta, this area is there's not a lot of inventory. So there's still multiple offers. And you have to get people to believe you when you say this house is not going to be here tomorrow. You know, and there's a little bit of a learning curve that goes along with that. They have to really almost lose 1 or 2 houses to actually start believing in you. You know, you can say it and they want to kind of hear you, but they don't until they actually experience. So, you know, that's another thing. Just stay in the game. Don't get frustrated, because a lot of losing sometimes is actually teaching.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Man, that's a great point. Steve, so you mentioned kind of super tight markets and, you know, losing out on multiple offers. At what point in you know, like you had mentioned, you know, your longevity's contributed to, you know, your integrity, always doing the right thing. It's not worth, you know, one-time transactions to, you know, to really sabotage or derail an entire career. At what point, you know, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but at some point, you know, a buyer might not be a buyer in a certain market, in a certain price point, because they don't have the assets, the cash to make the right offer or asking. You know, how have you gone about over your career to where, you know, maybe, you know, yes, you can buy, but maybe not just right now. Maybe it's in your best interest to, you know, find a place, lease for 6 months. Let's reevaluate the market at that time. You know, how have you ever encountered, or how have you encountered in dealing with clients in that type of situation? Because it's real. It's what's happening. I mean, I had 2 conversations about the same thing today. And, you know, at what point do you just have to sit down and have that hard conversation with the client and not chase the commission, right? Because that's the big deal. It's like, oh man, I'm going to lose the commission if I don't get them in house, but and sacrifice doing the right thing. I mean, I would love your take and your perspective on that. I'm sure you've ran into that situation yourself.
Many times here, because, and I'll just tell you, I mean, I just had a referral call come in from, I think it was Virginia, and they're looking to buy in Peachtree City between 200 and 250. That really doesn't hardly even exist here. You know, so I immediately had to start trying to educate the agent who's got the transferring person coming in saying, I want you to know that I'm not trying to discourage them. I'm trying to set the right expectations for them to expect. Sometimes it's maybe moving right outside of the community. One of the adjoining communities is not quite as expensive, but has, similar housing, maybe bigger lots, but so that's it. And exactly what you said. Sometimes we have to clean up credit. We get them to credit servicers to clean it up. And, we kind of come up with a plan. Please don't go out and buy anything that you don't have to do. Please pay down your credit cards. Do the smart things so that you can get your family to the next stage that you want to get them to. And that's kind of what it's about is fulfilling their wants and needs. And we're the avenue of how to get them there. I mean, I feel like I educate them on a daily basis. And by the way, I set the expectations for the lender as well. By the time they've gotten to a lender, I've already kind of set the expectations of what they're going to experience with them.
I love that. And you take ownership in it. And I think that's a great lesson for everybody listening in is it's on you. It's don't, and I know one of your mentors and coaches and it just always rings true for what he said is like, never assume intelligence for another human being. Never assume that they should know to not go out and buy a new car right before we close on their house. And so it's like, it's on you as the advisor, as the go-to resource, the strategy of preeminence, and really educate the client. Being the one that's like, hey guys, I'm sure you get this, this, you're smart, but I just want to remind you, we don't need to go out. We don't need to establish new credit. We don't need to buy anything. We don't need to do that. And here's why. We cannot ever assume that they know that. And so we just have to take that ownership. I love hearing you say that. And hopefully everybody, really took that away for what Steve was sharing is that it's on us. It's on you as the trusted advisor to educate them through the process and never assume that they know.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, that's exactly it. And I'm not. This is one thing I always say. I know enough about lending to kind of guide you in the right way, but I'm going to get you to the best lender that I know, who's going to take you down the journey. I can kind of get you on the right path and what to expect, but that's the expert in their field. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not your lender.
Yeah, 100%. I know. Nate, who's on with us, commented, positivity is contagious. Definitely mindset is everything. So definitely struck a chord with him. I know in my career, it always has been, man, they're like cancers if you have somebody who's negative, and I can't stand it. Like first thing in the morning, if I go, what's going on, Steve? Oh man, get the hell away from me, man. I can hear it already. Like, maybe I try to bring you up, but there are some people that are just like that every day, and I separate myself from them. I used to call him, like the mayor of Negtown, man. This guy I used to work with named Kirby, and he was always negative. I mean, you get around that dude, you weren't going to close nothing that day.
Yeah.
And it could be something, and here's one thing, like and this is a lesson for everybody. We all have stuff going on. Like you got stuff going on at home. You got bills to pay. If you're doing well, you just got bigger bills to pay. Like right. We all have stuff going on, but you got to check it at the door. And some people just can't do that, and they bring it with them. And how are you going to influence? How are you going to help? How are you going to come from a position of positivity if you're carrying all that with you throughout the day? So I think you got to learn to, flip the switch, and be able to focus. The solutions to your problem are right on the other side of that phone, or right on the other side of that door, or whatever. That all the stuff that most of us are upset about and focused on from a negative aspect can all be solved if we just helped a few more people, right?
It's exactly it. I mean, we say this all the time. If you help them, they're going to help you. I figured that I go out there and I do a good job. I never look at what I'm going to get paid, by the way. That was something else my mom taught me. I can't look at it until the commission day. The money shows up. If I can tell everybody one thing on this thing, the money will show up if you do a good enough job and you're there and you're present and your primary concern is that person who's in front of you. And John knows, man, I've had some health issues this year and they've sucked, But when I walk out that door every single morning, there's not a soul in the world except for those who are like in my really, really tight circle. And sometimes even they aren't going to know that I'm not feeling well that day. I'm just not going to do it. You know, I might come home and feel that way afterwards, but in the game, and of course, y'all know I've wrestled. Look, I mean, you're there. There's no one else in that circle but you at that time. So, you know, you got to make it happen. And that's the way I just approach every single day like that it's my job to make it happen today.
And for Kitchens, you and I talked about something the other day. We spent almost all day, Kitchens and I, on the whiteboard, kind of rehashing some of the principles of our coaching program and philosophy, and kind of, you know, updating it a little bit. But one of the things that we talked about was you can focus on creating a sale, or you can focus on creating a relationship, right? And if you're talking about lifetime value and you're talking about referrals and everything else, you're best served by focusing on the relationship and the experience. Sales come and go, right? But you got a relationship. I don't have to build from ground zero every time. A sale, I got to start from ground zero every time. I don't get any I don't come into it with a handicap. Those of you that golf, right? Or maybe I have zero handicap. I'm shooting better than par with the relationship. You know, remember that, Kitchens?
Yep, absolutely, man. It is all about building that lifetime value in the relationship. Just look, I mean, you've been in this for 25 years. It's not like you're going to slow down and quit tomorrow. And so, like, you look at the relationship capital and the relationship equity that you've built over the years, and it's just establishing that goodwill. You know, it's just all of those mental models, those principles, and, you know, just really coming into the mindset and really thinking of, man, how can I add value to this person's life today, and really help them get clear on what it is they want to accomplish and helping them accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take away there, guys that are listening. I mean, don't focus on the paycheck. Focus on delivering the value and helping that person, like Steve said, and that's going to get you everything that you want and far more.
And I'll go to, you know, we talked about some of the things that we struggle with. So, you know, that being a new construction sales agent, you didn't have to really do a whole lot of follow-up. That's a lot where my business came from, was because I sat in that neighborhood. I became the neighborhood expert. You know, so if they would go to resale, they wouldn't even call the people. They'd call me, because that's who they dealt with the entire time. But on what you just said, though, John, is where my biggest failure, it was not following up and creating that database, and, you know, and just kind of taking it for granted that the next business was coming in because I was new home sales. And that's what, you know, we finally have gotten it. Over the past year or so, I've been dead set on getting systems in place, going back, creating old client lists, and because that's where the gold is. And I'll be 49 in 2 weeks. I figure I can do this for another 15, maybe 20 years if I want to at a
Sure.
decent click without taking. I mean, I can always do it. There's nothing to stop you.
Yeah.
I mean, at a high level, 15 years is easy to do for me, for another. But I've got to, and that's what we did. We've gone back and we are mining our database and our relationships that we've established. We spent the money to already get it. Why keep spending money to chase more when it's right there in front of us?
Yeah,
I love
100%.
And you know, you nailed it right there too, Steve. Hopefully everybody listening got that, is that for you to even play this game moving forward, systems and processes are just like, I mean, it's a table stake. It's what, you know, Michael always talks about. It's just like, you got to have those just to even play the game. And so, like, if you don't have a system and process around acquiring clients and nurturing and developing relationships, you're going to be irrelevant in a short period of time. And it is absolutely critical that you guys get that if you want to be around. Like, you know, Steve Sirius want to be around for the next 15, 20 years if he wants to. And because he's going to have the systems and processes in place to proactively manage his relationships. And that is one of the downsides to the new construction business. And I also think being in the REO business taught you those habits as well, to where you get very reactive to the situation, right? So like in the new homes, you get very reactive to that builder. And that's why it becomes a JOB, because when the builder's upset or pissed off and it's 9:30 at night and he's burning you up, you're like, holy man, this is my only client. This is my only source of income. I got to take this call. And it's just, it's good. But it also has its downside. So it's really important to understand how to work that relationship and work that dynamic. And it's a fun game, dude. Like, I loved hearing what you said, because I know one of the top agents on the entire planet. He built his business with the same strategy that you just talked about. He went new construction, low entry point. He developed the relationships. He resold their properties when they wanted to sell. He continued. He just did a really good job of building that relationship to where, when they were going to sell, he was their go-to agent. Then he helped them find their new home as they were, moving up. So it's a great strategy for those of you listening that are trying to get into a market. There is a strategy to align with new construction to help you, really jumpstart your career.
I'm going to give away a little secret, because I'll never do it again. If you want to really try to get a builder, I'll give you a secret. Go find you an investor, go to the builder, offer to buy their model home from them, and you'll sit in it. And then you're holding the cost of the model home through the whole thing. The builder's not carrying it. They're able to build one more house. I guarantee you they'll hire you. Guarantee you.
That's a good one.
I love that. That's a golden nugget right there.
I used to do it. I won't do it. I won't do it anymore, because I don't want that. That's not what I want anymore. But go buy it. Go buy their model home. Tell them you'll buy their model home. You get all the listings. And then actually what happens is, the first one in always wins, right? Because the price only continues usually to go up. So
sure.
You're setting the market for them too. Yeah.
Well, my deal was when I left, I sold it, right? So I profited then.
Yep.
By the way, I carried all the cost. I carry, utilities, payments, whatever it was, I carried the cost. But I benefited on the sale of it because I made the profit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the builder will see that you got some skin in the game, so they'll like that. They'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's serious.
So if you want a builder, go get them. Just go buy their model home.
I love it. Big takeaway.
Awesome.
So I wanted to ask you, since we were on the subject, getting into like the mechanics of it, you mentioned that this year you've really got your systems dialed in. So let's let everybody kind of peek behind the curtain. What CRM are you using?
We actually use the Market Maker. And trust me, we've tried them all.
Okay.
We've done Follow Up Boss. We've done KV Core. I've done Sync, Commissions Inc. Some of those can be so smart that it's too smart for me. I like the way, for me, I just like the front panel of that system versus less information sometimes is more for me. If you inundate me with too much stuff, it's just like, it's like a bug on the windshield. It just kind of, so by hiring Justin is also, he's my video guy. He's probably the best videographer that you're going to ever encounter, but he's also a very systems and funnel person as well. So on that side, he's creating a lot of the systems that allow us to better use even what Market Maker has to offer.
And I imagine that has to do with retargeting your sphere and different segments in your database, right? I noticed you're doing videos. Checked out your Facebook page earlier today just to kind of see what some of the recent stuff was. And you're doing a good job of posting your just listed and doing some things like that. So he's helping you out with all that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, we just have a system there that, when it gets listed, and we're even changing it up now. It's about to get better. To where it's a sneak peek. It's and if you notice, our photos are very much a rapid fire photo because people aren't going to stay on there very long. So if we keep it going fast, it keeps them looking longer. And I talked to John today too. I've also learned how to target other metropolitan areas on my boost that I know are coming into the area. So like I tagged LA, like we talked about Hollywood. I tagged it. I'm even going to probably go and tag a couple of the other areas that I know are transferring some people in here.
Yep.
Because now they're going to see, and here was the revelation I had. It was at the EXP Con last year, And I was walking through the middle of the crowd, and a guy stops me and says, "Your name Freeman?" I said, "Yeah." And you couldn't see anything. And he said, "Steve Freeman, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, I don't know you, but I know you." And what happened was I was showing up on his news feed almost every time. By the way, he's in Seattle, Washington. So, I mean, like we're on opposite ends of the country, but yet he knew who I was when I walked through the crowd. So by doing these tags and, sponsoring in cities where I know they're coming to Atlanta, guess what? They're in another agent doing that right now.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what he's doing there is when you make your post, tag other geographic areas. If you've got a relationship with other agents in other areas, tag them. You're doing them a favor, getting them exposure, and you're getting access to their audience. But that is a big one right there. You think your market's too small? Start tagging bigger markets.
So don't abuse it. That's my advice to you. Please, if you do this, don't abuse it, because you don't. And I'm just going to say, I did tag John Kitchens right here. I tagged another coach of mine, and I tagged Al Stasic on a couple of posts. And that's actually was the link in, because all these guys have 5,000 people each. I got in front of 15,000 people. Well, let's say we have 400 each in common. That's almost 15. That's a 40-something thousand people that I got exposed to that I would have never seen. That's how that guy knew me, by the way. We figured it out, that it was through a common. We had friends in common.
Do your homework though, and know where your buyers are coming from. Right, it's not a shotgun approach.
No,
be real smart about it. So I know Gordon Day's on, and he was the example. What we were talking about this morning was like Gordon needs to be highlighting, up north from him. Right, they're coming down to Pensacola, out of New York, out of Jersey, out of Boston. Where are those buyers coming from? So you got to be strategic, knowing, do your homework, guys. Know where your buyers are coming from. I mean, it's not just Steve's not just closing his eyes and throwing a dart, just at the wall. He's really
and to the point of that, like, I know that some of the movie people that are moving here are coming out of Vancouver. They shoot TV shows up there all the time. We have Netflix and Hulu and the rest of them that shoot here. So sometimes I do it. And Gordon, that's what you should do, buddy. I see you on here. You should be tagging the Canadian snowbirds. Know where they're coming from to come to Pensacola, Florida. They want to buy. They don't want to just rent.
Yep, 100%.
So we're talking about relationships. Let's kind of transition into how you've been building out your team, Steve, whether it's been, it may not have been the easiest thing. You're still, I think, in the process of really filling out all the people that you want to have as key players on your team. But kind of tell us what you're doing to try to get that done and what you found difficult, what works, and that sort of thing.
So it's been sort of a little bit of a revolving door, and I'm honest as the day is long. I am and have been a great broker for 20-something years, but I ran a Remax, and I ran a Keller Williams, and I ran my own, where I really didn't have to do a lot of coddling, a lot of touch and base. I mean, you had a problem, you came to me, I fixed it, right? And then you kind of went on your merry way. Doing a team is a lot different, where you got to be a little bit more hands-on. You got to do more team meetings. There is a lot more coddling that's involved. So that's been a big aha for me as a broker, that I had to kind of step back and still be a broker, but also be more of a mentor, coach, friend, consultant, that way that when I say friend, though, it's kind of like being friends with your kids. God put you on the earth to be a parent, not their friend. So there's that real fine line that's there, that you should still have expectations. And if they're not meeting your expectations, then, or not expectations, just your standards. If they don't meet your standards, it just ain't going to work.
Right. I think the thing too, is that you really have to sink into that leadership role, and, the game starts to change. And so when you've got about 4 or 5 people kind of under your watch is when the game changes, right? You can play checkers, and then all of a sudden the game changes to chess, and it's the same board, but it's different pieces. And so, you got to start, you got interesting dynamic pieces, and that's the same thing with your team. And so, one of the top things that you have to learn, and who you have to become, is that you just have to be a better leader. And really, and it's no different, like you said, with the kiddos. I love that. And it's because, we have to be mindful of that we are a leader to our kids, and how are we showing up, and are we modeling the behavior that we want to instill in them? And it's like, I can still be your friend, but I'm gonna model how I want you to lead, your friends. I know you've got young girls. So like, and for me, my daughter as well, going into high school next year, and I have to show up and model the behavior of how I want, her boyfriend to treat her, right? And how I interact with Holly. And so it's just really important to remember that. And it carries over, guys. It carries over to your team. It's so critical that you guys get that and get that takeaway and becoming the best leader possible. But Steve, talk a little bit about the dynamics and the hires. I know we've talked about Justin a little bit, and talk about the key components, because I believe the hire that you've just made is the third, maybe the second critical hire. I can make an argument second or third critical hire that you've got to make. So kind of unpack that for everybody, kind of the sequence of events, who you have in place, because I think it's important for them to they don't need to say, go out and try to hire a videographer tomorrow if they don't have a RIA in place or somebody else helping make calls. So I think giving them right things, right order will put some context around it.
Well, I truly believe that, like, RIA is my right arm. By the way, everybody who's in my world is licensed. There's not anybody who is unlicensed. So if I need to actually fall back on them for any given reason, they're there. I think really and truly, John, I think it is your assistant, because, once you get to a certain level, you either pay somebody as an assistant or you are the assistant. And, you can't continue to be productive sitting here doing paperwork or sitting here making sure that stuff's turned into the attorneys or whatever. I did it for a long time. I would say no one ever tried to do what I did. It's kind of hell on earth. I was decent at it because I've got ADD, but I can come back to it and finish it. So doing multiple things for me doesn't really bother me, but I think that I really believe that that's the pillar. Because like if I'm unavailable, I forward my phone calls to her. So somebody's always getting a live human. You typically getting a voicemail. Jeff, I think you actually got that when you tried to get me. That to me is critical. I have Michelle is my ISA that I have. We've kind of integrated her into both kind of ISA and almost a little bit of customer support, touchy-feely, where she's calling back some of our past clients.
Love it.
That's kind of where we're starting to really build that, nurture, which I relationship people. I'd say almost all my clients have a relationship with me at some point, good or bad. No, mostly good. Truth. Anyways, but that's been a good one. Justin, man, like moving into where this whole industry is going, for me, that's a critical hire, because he's multi-talented on both the funnel side and the video side. So he can, create the squeeze and the landing and the pushes and those kind of things. And it keeps me able to talk to people and be with people, which is where that's where I'm best. I mean, I'm best talking to people, intermingling, going to lunch. It's funny. There's somebody else in our group that meets a lot of people at lunch. You can't really duplicate that, but that is really true for me too. If I go to dinner, I'm always meeting someone, because everybody wants to talk about real estate. So
absolutely.
And I wear my company shirt, my own logo everywhere I go. Because I'm not getting usually out of hand. If I am, I do change that, by the way. Don't know who that is. My twin.
Who's that guy?
Hey, Joey. But yeah, so that's kind of and having fun too, by the way. Man, this is a serious business. Laugh it off. There's this is the most stressful time for people in their lives. I'm going to give you one other thing. Here's a nugget for everybody too. If you're going to ask for a review, ask for a review the week before the closing, because if you ask for it right at the closing or after, that is the worst time of their life. They're moving, they're packing, everything's out of, and they're not coming back to it. I've just for me, I found that that's a much better success rate to ask for it ahead of the closing.
And
That's
ask
a good
for it.
one.
Ask for it if you know you're going to get it, right? And
You better
and
get it. You better start the transaction thinking that you need a 5-star review at the very end, and that will make your business that much better. But no, you should.
100%.
There is not one reason that you should not get a positive review unless they're just, I mean, everybody's going to get a bad one every now and then. It's a numbers game. But if you will start with the end in mind and know that you're going to ask that person for a 5-star review at the very end, I guarantee your business will be better.
Just that mindset.
Yeah, and even, I guess even in situations where things don't go perfect or as smooth as they could, as long as you communicate well with your client, you keep them up to date on what's going on, right? You're honest with them about everything, then you're still going to get a good review. And especially if you tell them to just be honest, there's a few things that didn't go the way that we expected, but were we able to handle it and so on, just explain how you handled it. I mean, that's really probably like the best experience is when things don't go perfect and you manage to keep them calm, cool, and comfortable and still get the job done.
Right. And hey, sometimes it might cost you. And I always say that going to college was not free. Sometimes we learn lessons in this business that aren't free either. And there's a price tag to it. You just better learn when it does cost you.
Yep. And a lot of it usually circles back around to what we were talking about earlier, is that you didn't take, ownership of the relationship and being that their advisor, and really being proactive in talking about the process that we're going through. So those are usually where we learn the lessons. At least for me, that was always the case.
Yeah.
Get that bedside manner, right? Hey, give me give me a good bedside manner, even if the diagnosis isn't what I want. Deliver it to me in a good way and tell me what I can do to fix it.
I'm gonna kind of switch back a little bit and go back to kind of bringing people in, which I've done. I would say that from this point forward, it is a much more selective deal for me. It's not really as much, I'm going to just, oh God, you want to come work for me? Yeah, I'll make it work. I think that was, and there's another coach that we both know, and he's like, you will get out how you bring them in. And so if we bring them in the wrong way and you just start grabbing people and bringing them in, that's kind of a recipe for failure. And unfortunately, I've had to kind of learn the hard way. And, there's some dead bodies laying in the wake. It happens, but you don't dwell on it. You learn from it and you move forward.
So what's some of the criteria, core values, characteristics that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to do the right thing with me. You got to be willing to learn. You got to be coachable.
How can you tell if I'm coachable, Steve? Everybody says they're coachable. I get it all the time. Oh yeah, no, I'm open. So how do you determine that?
It's just usually a series of, kind of a question. You get the feel for them. That. How did you handle this? If you had a different way to do it, what would you have done differently? If somebody had whispered in your ear to do it this way, would you have still taken the same path, or would you have done something a little bit differently to make that happen? I've learned, of course, God, I've hired hundreds of, maybe close to thousands of agents through, 20 years of brokering. So, you just kind of get a feel for, when people are blowing smoke and when they're not. Also, I usually know them or somebody around them. And, it's pretty easy for me to, and that was a hard lesson. I didn't really do some homework recently, and it potentially could have bit me. And unfortunately, it didn't work out the way I hoped it would. But I just kind of, it was a gut feel to move another way.
So I would imagine that even if I said, I know this guy, Steve, take my word for it, he's a great person, you're still going to put him through your process to make sure. Right?
Absolutely. Because your standards of good and my standards of good are two different things.
Right. Because we all have friends. I think it can be easy sometimes to try to be the nice guy and give everybody a shot because you know them and there's a relationship there. In my experience, if I go outside of the normal process and treat them any different, it usually doesn't end up well. it ends up being a situation where I can't hold them to the same standard. They expect a different dialogue, you know what I mean, or a different experience because they happen to know me. So I think if you are going to bring people in that you know outside of the business that you're going to give a shot, it's important to put them through the same process that you would put somebody who just walked up to you off the street.
Every time. It will burn you if you don't. I mean, it's inevitable. It will bite you in the ass.
Kitchens, you got anything to say? I know, you're a big people person when it comes to getting the right people on the bus before you start taking off.
Yeah. And, I think it's the number one thing is just creating the leverage to where you can free up and do the dollar producing activities. Just like what Steve had just mentioned, if you're stuck in doing paperwork, then that's kind of going to average out what your earning potential is going to be over the period of time. And I couldn't agree more. You've got to get that solid rock foundation that you can create leverage with. That's kind of the dynamic administrative person that really becomes your right hand. And then, I can start to lean one way or the other, but you definitely got to have somebody. I love, incorporating, our take of the ISA, and I say our take, and I mean that from just mine and Kinder's experience in the ISA world and how we leverage the ISA. The ISA was really an executive assistant, gatekeeper, prospector, nurturer, loved on our clients, loved on, the nurtures, and just really leveraged the heck out of that, out of them person, because that freed it up off of you. And, we have the best of intentions, but we become the bottleneck. We become the constraint. So we've got to create that leverage around us to free us up to do the things that actually matter. And then, man, I used to say the key marketing hire was maybe the fourth hire. You maybe get a buyer's agent in there to help create some leverage, but I'm almost to the point right now that you move that key dynamic, and you got to go video. They've got to know how to do video. They've got to know how to edit and, edit video and really have that dynamic skill set, because it still frees you up to do more of the dollar producing activities, drive revenues. And then, maybe you get some leverage with the buyer's agent. So, that's the right dynamics in the right order. I think it also circles back to what's the goal, being clear on your definition of the goal. Steve has a clear goal for where he wants to take his business, his career. I mean, Steve's already thinking, right? Next 15, 20 years, what does it look like? And building in that direction. And I think a lot of agents, they don't think that far down the road. They're thinking about their next commission check, and then that gets them in trouble, right, Steve? Then they're thinking about the dollar. They're not thinking about the work that they've got to put in to make that happen. So that's my get. Here, what I kind of listen for in conversations, and Steve's thinking big picture, and I think that's a great lesson for everybody, tuning in, to be thinking further down the road than just the next commission check.
I think one thing I just wanted to revisit that you said, Steve, that I think is super important is when you are looking to bring people on your team, you're asking questions with specific intent and purpose, right? So, you spend some time and think about what questions you would ask that would identify the kind of people with the characteristics you're looking for, and ask those questions with purpose. Don't just sit somebody down and ask them some questions. And I don't know, I ask something different all the time, or don't really know why I'm asking them that question. I'm asking specific questions to see how they respond. It's not the words that they're saying all the time. It's how they respond that tells me a lot. And you do have to focus on those leverage activities. There's, I can't remember which book it was that I read recently, but it talked about, and it's, a lot of people have said it, but if Steve, you've had some health issues, that probably meant that you weren't able to spend as much time in the business. And had it not been for the fact that you have some solid people around you, the business could have suffered. And if you can't step away, if you can't take a 2-week vacation, if you can't, deal with issues that take you out of the office and still have your business continue to run and run successfully, then you've got problems. And that's where, we can all be guilty sometimes, especially when we can do everything. You try to do it, and you think that that's a good thing. In reality, you are the bottleneck, like Kitchen said. So I think it's asking the right questions with intent to get the right people, and understand that people are your strength. They're not taking anything away from you. That allows you to deal with issues that might take you away from business for a little bit.
And I'll say this, one of the key questions that I was taught was, what lengths are you willing to go to be successful or to succeed? And if for some reason, somewhere down the line, they're not succeeding, they're not hitting their mark or the mark that you set for them, it's real easy just to say, hey, you said that you are willing to do anything to succeed. Do you really feel like that is where you are today? Or, and they have to answer themselves. It's not me. I've always said I never fire anybody. I de-hire them because typically I put them in the wrong position, But that for me was another big learning nugget that I took this year, from away from somebody, which was, what are you willing to put into it? And then at the end, if something's not happening, I can just say, do you feel like that you're doing everything that you could possibly do? Because you told me you're willing to do anything. And do you think that you're there?
Right.
Simple question.
Yep.
So as we kind of round things off with the call today, what do you think, Steve, you would attribute to your success, let's say over the last year? What's made the biggest impact in helping you grow your business over the last 12 months?
John Kitchens.
That guy right there?
It's John, and it's a multiple thing. I've invested a lot in the coaching. I've been with Ken DeReese over the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years with him. Yeah. Really, when I left the whole building business, I had to recreate myself like that. I walked away from about 85% of my income one day. Hung up the phone, and that was it. And let me tell you, that's a scary thing when you're making really big dollars to do that. But in a matter of just, I didn't miss a beat. I recreated myself. So I would say that you've got to be willing to take the risk sometimes. Don't go to the extreme, but be willing to take that risk. Don't dance in the safety area. Get with people. And I told John, I need some people around me, either via phone or on the, text messages or whatever, that I can communicate with that kind of hold me accountable, because, sometimes in an environment like I'm in, you're an island, because your other people that are your top echelon people are your competitors, and they don't want to talk to you about anything. So, that's a real important thing for me. It talks about it. I saw it the other day at the 5 people that are around you are no better than you, then you're in a cage. And that's why, it's very, very important for me to reach out and to go to events and to do things like that, so that I expose myself continuously to that caliber of people. Because it's like I used to say to people, you either soar like an eagle or you fly like a turkey. Which one do you want to hang out with? And that there's a lot of, and I'm not calling anybody a turkey. It's just it's an analogy. I'm sorry. But that's what it all boils down to, is you are going to be the people that you hang around.
100%.
Hey, eagles are endangered species, man. They're rare. You know what I'm saying? Turkeys. We got so many turkeys, we eat them for Thanksgiving.
But an eagle is a survivor. Think about
that. Yeah. No, it's so true. And, for those of you that are struggling and you're not sure, man, I don't have those people that I get to see every day. It's just like, Steve and I were talking, you look at somebody like, Darren Hardy, even still to this day, one of his mentors is the late Jim Rohn, right? But he still connects through Jim's teachings, right? So he surrounds and he consumes himself, with that material, right? That's the nutrients that he's putting into his mind each and every day. That's still one of his close circles, and a mentor of his. So, don't let that trip you up. Don't let that stop you. Just even connecting with somebody, just like this, can really help, move you off of, or not to feel like you're on that island.
Yeah.
There's enough outside factors, right? You got to always keep yourself pumped up, sell yourself, find a way to get yourself motivated. There's all kinds of outside factors that'll try to pull you away. So finding a core group or some training is definitely a big deal. We had a couple.
Music's good too.
Music.
Before you came on, dude, I was like rocking out, so that I'd be kind of, have a good demeanor for this. Yeah.
Get your mental state.
That's right,
Change your
man.
mental state.
I was
Right?
ready to go.
So I think we covered. I think we covered the questions that were there already. So if anybody has anything they want to ask or share, even before we end today's call, now's the time to do it. I do want to give Martha a chance because she had raised her hand a little bit earlier, and I think she might have had a question or something to share. So I've gone ahead and unmuted you, Martha. If you've got a question or something you wanted to share, you're free to do it.
She looks muted. Her microphone shows muted on mine.
And you should be able to, whoops, there you go. Now you should be able to talk. You may have to unmute yourself, Martha, but I've made it so that you should be able to do so.
Top right of the screen should do it. Oh, here, can I do it? No. I don't know.
And then anybody else who has a question, and Martha, if you're having an issue there, just go ahead and type your question, or if you had something to share, type it in the chat box. And then anybody else, go ahead. And don't forget, I think, just in the recap, Steve's nugget about just buy the builder's model home with an investor if you need to, and plant yourself there. And that'll do it for you if you want to get a relationship with a builder.
Cindy said, what I wish I knew when I first started.
There you go.
That's kind of hard to say. Kitchens and I were talking about this before we really came on live. The technology has changed so much from when I started. I've gone through, when we first started, we used map books that were like this, and we had MLS books that were like this, that were 2 weeks out of date when you got them. The dot matrix printers, they rang the hallways. Faxes weren't even legal. We could get them, but you started to have blue ink on them. That's so I don't, I would say what I wish I knew was to better follow up with people, to get their names, to get their numbers, find out birthdays, make everything way more relationship based. Buffini, that's what he teaches, it's all relationship, if I had known, and I was young too. It's kind of hard to say. You're young and balling and gunning. That's tough. If I was my age today, I might have known more really. But yeah, that's what I would say. If just create your database, mine it. There's more business inside your own business than you can go out and buy from any lead source.
100%. I think sometimes it takes a change. You know what I mean? Just in my own experience, you can be balling and everything is great, but it's going to change. I used to have people tell me all the time, Jeff, there's going to be rainy days. Nah, man, never. I'm crushing it. Never. There's going to be rainy days. And when those rainy days come, that's when you really realize, damn, I should have been doing this and I should have been doing that. And unfortunately, like some people just can't get up and get back to that level again from where they were. It's hard work getting there in the first place. Then they have to go all the way back down to the bottom of the hill and push that boulder back up. Yeah. Some people just never get it back to the top. So take what Steve was telling you today and, avoid having to push it.
It's a hard game. There's not a lot of in between. You're kind of at the top or you're at the bottom. There's not a lot of in betweens in this business. And I think as you see this business continue to move, that it's going to be more and more top, more and more bottom, and you see these massive teams that are building and, they're basically small brokerages inside a broker. So, I really believe that's coming. And you're right, man. This is my saying all the time. Lori knows. I say it. Money comes and money goes. And in this, I've been around where it's been peaks and valleys. I've been through the good, the bad, the good, the bad. Now we're in the good. So the bad's coming. Not won't be bad. It'll just be slower, right? It never stops. People always need houses.
For people that don't have the relationships and they're just trying to get leads and they're not focused on the relationships, it will be bad. It will be bad because the leads will dry up. The market will change, and without the benefit of a long-lasting relationship, it's going to be hard to generate business from scratch consistently over and over. I think. Any final thoughts, Kitchens? Go ahead, Steve.
I think you're exactly right on that. I mean, really and truly, you know, and in that relationship, you're also going to create advocates for you, you know, who will send you the business as well. I mean, if you treat people right, man, you don't have to do a whole lot of advertising. You just focus on them, and they're your biggest fan. You get a raving fan, man, that you can't get any better. You can't pay for that. All right, John, finish it up. Take us out.
You know, I think the biggest thing kind of goes back to what you were, you know, you were kind of mentioning, and just always doing the right thing, because people are watching, and they may not interact with you, they may not engage with you, but they're watching. And so just be mindful of that, how you're showing up every day, how you're modeling that behavior, because you know, to be able to continue to survive and level up your life and level up your business, you've got to become, you know, the version of you. You've got to become the best leader, and you know, just really be aware of that. People are watching.
Yep. And so, you know, on that note, one of the things that Steve attributed his success to is also having a coach. And so when this webinar ends, for those of you that are on, you'll see a link to schedule a growth call with Kitchens or one of our other top coaches, and we'll spend a good 30 minutes to an hour dissecting what's going on in your business and try to prioritize what you should be focused on and what you should do in the right order in order to get where you're going. So if you're interested in spending some time to get clear and get that clarity, be sure and take advantage of that. And until then, or until next time, I guess, we'll let everybody go. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Stay safe with those of you that are in areas with bad weather. And we'll see you next week with our next Spotlight interview.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jeff. Great job. See you guys.
Bye.